I had so much fun with the Dizzy Dot design a few weeks ago that I decided that the first Halloween design this year is going to be Dizzy Dots. The simple ghost shape that I'm putting in the middle of the Santorini stone is actually going to be left with the Santorini showing through. So right here I'm outlining the ghost in black. I'm going to outline the edge of the rock, and then I'm going to create the black background with kind of the ghost being sort of a peekaboo feature. I want the sparkly Santorini to show through to fill the color of white. The black background is going to really help the Dizzy Dots pop when they get on there. So let's get started. I'm going to throw down one of my little Lazy Susan turntables with a non-slip surface, and I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of the background with black. Santorini stones can be kind of porous, and this first coat of paint can sometimes soak into the stone a little bit, and it doesn't look like you have full opaque coverage. So I often need at least 2 coats of a color on top of the Santorini. So I'm going to get this initial color on, and then you can tell that there's some kind of missing spots, and I just give it another second coat of black paint to get it nice and filled in. I'm going to use 3 neon colors for the Dizzy Dots. I want to use neon orange, neon green, and neon purple because I think those are kind of Halloween themed colors. But the challenge with my neon paints is that they often do not have very good coverage just on their own. So I custom mix them. I add a little bit of a corresponding just apple barrel regular color paint to them, and then I add a few drops of Liquitex gesso, and I mix this up to give it a nice solid coverage, and it helps the neon pop through, and it helps it fully cover whatever I'm painting with. Dots are a little bit easier because it goes on kind of in a lump of paint at a time, but I still want to make sure that these have a nice vibrant color. So this is one of my tricks, is adding a little bit of a similar color paint and a couple drops of Liquitex gesso. Now comes the fun part, and I'm just going to start randomly placing dots of all 3 colors. I'm starting with my biggest dotting tool, and then I'm just going to gradually keep sizing down and fill up that black space. The black will show through a little bit, but for the most part, the dots are going to create a background as I continuously size down. If the paint in the dots is a little globby or a little bit thick, you can take a small fine paintbrush and just kind of swirl it around to evenly distribute it. Now that we've got this full of colored dots, I'm going to come through and fill a black top dot on top of every single one of those colored dots except the super teeny tiny ones. So I'm just going to fill them all in with black in a smaller dotting tool size. So I want the edges of the dot to show the bottom color. So the neon colors are on the bottom, and then a black top dot on top of that. After we get all these black top dots on comes the part where you kind of have to flex your brain muscles and focus a little bit, because we're going to use the pattern of orange, green, and purple. So if the bottom neon dot is orange and then there's a black top dot, then the next color is going to be green. If the bottom dot is green followed by a black top dot, then we're going to add purple on top. If the bottom dot is purple, we're going to add an orange dot on top of the black dot. So it's kind of a sandwiched pattern where you're going orange, green, purple, but with a black dot in between each of those colors. And that's what creates that dizzying effect while still giving the pattern as the dot graduates down to a smaller size. And we're just going to repeat this pattern over and over until we've got the Dizzy Dots pretty filled in. in some randomly placed dots of holographic glitter paint. It's kind of a translucent paint. When it dries, you won't be able to see those white dots, but you'll just see a bit of sparkle kind of throughout the design. Now I'm going to take a Posca PC1MR paint pen, and I'm going to fill in 2 oval shapes for the eyes on the ghost, and I'm going to fill them completely in with the black pen, and then I'm going to draw a little circle for the open mouth on the ghost. I didn't think it was possible to make these dots pop more, but once I added resin, the colors got even more vibrant. I hope you're as excited about spooky season as I am, and I can't wait to paint some more Halloween rocks with you. Let's jump into spooky season with some spooktacular basic mandala designs for Halloween and for beginners. I'm using this dotting tool set, and the reason I like it, especially for beginners, is because it's numbered and they're graduated sizes, so it makes it really easy to work on these mandala designs. I'm going to use orange, purple, and green neon paint, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of Liquitex gesso to make sure that these paints are nice and solid. Sometimes neon paints are a little bit finicky. I have a homemade stone that's already coated black, and I'm going to add some full spectrum dragonfly glaze. I'm adding the center dot with a large flat acrylic dotting tool and smoothing out that little bit of paint in the middle. Next, I'm going to take the number 2 dotting tool and make 4 dots in equal corners. So think north, south, east, and west. Then I'm going to fill in dots equally in between those dots, and then again equally in between those dots. Then I'll move up to the number 4 dotting tool, so I'm doing even numbers, and I'm going to place these orange dots exactly lined up in between the 2 dots in the previous line. This is the trick to mandalas, so you will gradually move up in size on your dotting tools and just line up those dots in between 2 dots from the previous circle of dots. So you can see I'm moving up now to a number 6 size dotting tool, and I'm lining those purple dots up in between the 2 orange dots and just go around in a circle. There are many mandala artists that are so amazing and intricate, but this is a pretty basic design. My mandalas are all pretty basic and work off of this kind of idea of just lining up the next circle of dots around the previous circle and then adding detail after that. So I'm going to continue here by adding the green all the way around, and then orange again, and then purple and orange, and until we'll have large dots going all the way out to the edge of this homemade stone. If you want to learn how to make these homemade stones, there's a link in the description to show you how to make these with silicone molds and ultracal cement. You'll notice with this round of purple that the paint is not quite filling in the dot completely. So I'm going to put these dots on, and then I'm going to take a fine paintbrush and go ahead and go back and kind of fill in those little spots that where you can see the black kind of showing through, so that it's got full coverage of the purple paint. This is a challenge you might see with neon paints or lighter color paints or thinner paints. So if they're kind of watery, you might have this issue. Then with this orange paint, one of the challenges is you're going to notice that there's kind of a blob of paint in the middle of each dot. And when you're on the edge of the rock like this, that paint can actually drip down the side of the rock. So after I get all these dots on, I'm going to come back with a nail dotting tool that has the metal tip and just kind of swirl in the little bit of paint that's in the middle so that it's evenly distributed and it won't drip down the side of the rock. The next part of the design is to start and add some detail by taking the colors and kind of blooming them out into the design. So we started with white in the middle. So now I'm going to come back, since that first round of dots was a 2, I'm going to come to the number 1 dotting tool and put white in between the orange dots. And then I'm going to move up a size and then pull that orange out to the next row, and so on, and just keep pulling the colors out, and it kind of makes it bloom almost like a flower. And this is not a super fancy design. It's very simple, but you can see how it kind of comes to life. Now I'm just doing kind of a dot and drag technique just to create a different effect on the edge of the rock in between the orange dots. And then I'm going to come through with a dotting tool and some white paint and just add some walking dots where it's larger, medium, smaller, larger, medium, smaller. Just for some accents. I had no plan on this. I just kind of was going with it. And so you can kind of play around and do what you want. On this rock, I'm going to show you another way that you can bloom the colors out. So instead of putting it in between the dots, you take the color prior and then add it to not the center of the dot, but kind of the bottom of the dot. So you can see how it's centered on the bottom of the dot and kind of blooms up so that you have two colors and the colors are radiating out of the design. It's really simple, but it looks really pretty. And then on those last dots, I ended up putting all three colors on the largest dot around the edge. The last trick I want to show you is what I call dizzy dots. So this is by adding multiple dots on top of each other. So black, orange, and then a final layer of black that we'll do at the end. So this is happening with both the orange and the purple. I added a layer of black dots with a smaller tool and then went back with orange and the purple over it. And so you can see how it's kind of creating this layered dizzying effect. But while those are drying, we're gonna add some fun little accents to the center dots. So on one rock that's got an orange center, I'm gonna make a little jack-o'-lantern. Super cute to theme it for Halloween. And then on the one that has a purple dot, I'm gonna add a cute little spider with its little spindly legs and kind of a furry body in the middle of the rock, and I will come back and add eyes later. And then on the last one, I'm going to add Jack Skellington's face. And this is a lot easier than you think it's going to be. You just have to kind of Google for an image and then look at the eyes, the nostrils, and then the mouth. It's a pretty simple face, but highly recognizable, and it really takes this rock to the next level. And after finishing Jack's face, we're going to head back to finish off those dizzy dots with a last little round of small black dots on top of the orange and the purple rounds, and you'll see why I call them dizzy dots. So because I didn't want to waste paint, I was able to crank out 4 mandala rocks in the course of an afternoon, pop some UV resin on them, and look at that shine and how the dragonfly glaze pops. These are going to be so much fun. Hey everyone, this week I have a really easy design for you with a special trick about how to use transfer paper to get a design onto a rock. You can use this technique to transfer a design that you've drawn out on paper or something that you've printed out. And you want to make sure that you use the shiny side of the carbon or transfer paper down on the side of the rock where you want the design to transfer. You can see here that I placed the transfer paper shiny side down, and now I'm placing the design that I drew out on paper on top. I am going to use a little bit of Scotch tape to secure this to the rock so it doesn't move when I'm tracing over it. And now I'm just going to use a pencil to trace over my design, and you do want to make sure to apply a fair amount of pressure so that that transfer paper will transfer the design onto the rock. Now I'm just going to remove the tape and the transfer paper and the design, and it's on here pretty lightly, but you can see that it transferred the design onto the Santorini stone. Now I'm just going to take a fine-tipped black Posca pen to outline the design that transferred onto the stone. Now I'm going to take a pencil and embellish the design a little bit more and add a spider web and a little spider, and then I'll come back over this with the Posca pen. And because I love my glitter, I'm going to take some black glitter paint and go over all of the writing as well as the spider and the spider web. And here I'm using one of my fine line paint brushes because the spiderweb lines are so thin. Now I'm going to make my own color orange paint for the dotted background. I love this neon orange paint, but it's never quite solid enough. So I'm mixing it with a dot of liquid gesso, then the neon orange paint, and then just a touch of this multi-surface orange paint. And I'm mixing it up. Now comes the fun part where I'm going to start with a fairly large dotting tool and add large dots to the background of the rock. And then as it goes along, you're going to see that I'm going to start using smaller and smaller dotting tools and just randomly placing the dots all over the design to kind of fill in the background where there's not a whole lot of white left. The beauty of this design is that it's very simple and it's only two colors. It's black and orange, but the dotted background creates a very cool effect. You can see as we get down to these smaller dots that they really finish off the look of that background design. Another little finishing touch, I'm going to take some neon green paint and add some neon green eyes on that little spider. I should test this rock out with a black light, see how well that neon orange shows up. This is a really fun design, it's very easy, and it's a great way for you to get your feet wet with dotting if you're just starting out.